And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Starting off with today's sea ice analysis, you can see the open area here that's in the Chukchi Sea closing off now and becoming more ice covered and a little farther to the south. Still quite an open area here over the southern Chukchi Sea through the Bering Strait, but ice will continue to increase in these areas here for the upcoming week. And for the tonight's forecast, we've got an elongated front here, with a couple of low centers out over the Aleutians. Most of the winds up over the southern Bering Sea out of the east, but rain and winds extending across the Fox Islands to the Alaska Peninsula. Less wind and much drier up to the north here with high pressure over the northern interior. Colder tonight and clearing over the western part of the state. Lingering snow, eastern Kuskokwim Valley on up into the central and eastern interior here with snow showers over the Copper River Basin, Matanuska Valley, Susitna Valley, and this low in the Gulf here, producing snow for Yakutat over to about Cordova with rain and snow in across the northern panhandle there with mostly snow from Juneau on up toward Haines and then mostly rain along the central and south coast. And then for tomorrow, that trough kind of swings in, bringing again rain from roughly Sitka across Prince of Wales Island. Mixture precipitation inland and to the north, but again from about Petersburg up to Juneau and over towards Yakutat and northward. That'll be in the form of snow, nothing too terribly heavy, maybe a few inches or so, a couple inches. And still some light snow going on here over the southeast interior. High pressure, cold conditions, still a little gusty on the west winds there for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, but diminishing. And clear and cold here across the western interior on down toward Kodiak Island, but a lot less wind, or not much wind at all there for Kodiak. Even into Bristol Bay, not too bad. Gusty winds and rain push eastward here into the Alaska Peninsula, extending back toward the eastern Aleutians, where the winds diminish as that low center moves over the area. And the Pribilof Islands are right on the northern edge of the rain there, but still some gusty winds here over the central Bering Sea. And this front now north of the Aleutians, leaving just some showers behind the area there. And then for Wednesday, all we have now is just a weak trough out here over the central Bering Sea with some showers for Adak and Atka, extending into the eastern Aleutians. Very light precipitation here, mostly due to the trailing edge of this cold front, separating the southern advance of some cooler air here with the Arctic high building in over the central interior. Clearing colder conditions here in store for all of interior Alaska, right on down to Prince William Sound, the Kenai Peninsula. Mostly clear skies, but light winds there for Kodiak Island. And for the southeast coast, rain and snow, with snow in the north and rain down along the central and south coast. And for the coastal water forecast here, central and south coast of the Panhandle, west winds tomorrow at 15 knots, east to southeast 15 knots for the central coast, seas at about 5 to 6 feet. Clarence Strait, south at 15, Stevens Passage, south at 15 with some higher gusts, and southeast at 15 for Lynn Canal. And then on Wednesday, winds swing around to the north, pick up a little bit there for Lynn Canal up to 20 knots with 4-foot seas. And then on the south coast here, west to southwest at 15 knots. Central and north coast, looking at east and northeast winds, mostly at 15 to 20 knots, and light south winds for Clarence Strait. Prince William Sound, northwest, 15 knots for the day on Tuesday. Variable winds, 10 to 15 knots for the eastern North Gulf Coast. The west side here, north at 20 knots, and small craft advisories, Kamishek Bay and the Barren Islands. West northwesterlies at 30 knots, and Cook Inlet, variable to north winds, 10 to 15 knots. And then on Wednesday, small craft advisories here for southern Cook Inlet with winds out of the north up to 25 knots. Same thing for Kamishek Bay, and 30-knot winds out of the north for the Barren Islands. Otherwise, the North Gulf Coast here, northeast at 15 knots, but up to 30 knots there over the eastern North Gulf Coast. And Prince William Sound, northeast winds at 15 knots. Kodiak Island, west winds for Tuesday at 15 knots, seas 3 feet. Bristol Bay, though, looking at small craft advisories, northeast winds 25 knots. And the Alaska Peninsula, east winds 20 to 30 knots. Outlook for Wednesday for the peninsula here, east to northeast winds 25 to mostly 30 knots. Northeast at 25 for Bristol Bay and Kodiak Island. Small craft advisories, north winds 25 knots. Eastern Aleutians tomorrow, winds east 30 to 35 knots with Unalaska Island looking at easterly gales. And for Adak and Atka, east to south winds 25 to 30 knots, and also looking at 25 to 30 knot winds for the Western Aleutians. Then for the day on Wednesday, we've got still kind of a variable wind pattern out here for the Western Aleutians at 20 to 30 knots. Adak and Atka, though, north winds at 20 knots with 7 to 9 foot seas. And the Eastern Aleutians, east winds 20 to 25 knots. And for the southwest coast, we've got northeast winds tomorrow, 20 to 25 knots, northeast at 20. Up there for St. Lawrence Island and Norton Sound, northeast at 15. 40 knot winds out of the east, so some good gales in the forecast there for the Pribilof Islands. They'll seas up to 15 feet. And minimum gales for St. Matthew Island for east winds at 35 knots. That continues into Wednesday there for St. Matthew Island. St. Paul and St. George, east winds 35 knots. And for the southwest coast, northeast at 15 to 25. Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island, east winds 10 to 15 knots. And for the Chukchi Sea, we've got north to northeast winds at 10 to 15 knots. Western Arctic coast, winds out of the south at 10. And for the central coast, west winds at 15 knots. Still a little brisk here on the east side with west winds at 20 to 30 knots. Then for Wednesday, those winds come down out of the west and southwest down to 10 to 15 knots now for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Central coast, south at 15. And small craft or brisk wind advisories for the western Arctic coast there, southwest 15. And basically south winds at 15 to 20 knots for the Chukchi Sea. Okay, now it's after 4.